The three that we're focusing on in particular, from being washed or dumped into the MS4 system. You have to have a permit if you fall into the category of having enough, a big enough population and land area. And the stormwater management plan basically describes how your municipality is going to comply with your WIPD's permit and the TMDL allocations that are going to be in the permit. And the point again is to minimize the discharge of pollutants into the system and ultimately minimize the discharge of the pollutants into the streams and rivers and Lake Michigan. So in the Milwaukee River Basin, there are 44 different permitted MS4s in the entire watershed. I'm probably not going to get into the specifics, like what's the difference between a general permit and a group permit. As for a specific permit, Leanne knows all that stuff. But Shorewood's permit is in a group permit with the other municipalities in the North Shore group, right? So River Hills, Fox Point, Bayside, Glendale. Okay, and as Leanne said, that permit is going to be up for renewal fairly soon. Waste load allocations. Remember, so you can barely see in the background that picture of the treatment plant. Remember, that's not the load allocation, not the heron in the woods, but the waste load. Those allocations are developed as part of the TMDL and they're reflected in the permits. The MS4s are assigned individual TMDL waste load allocations, and they're by their reach shed because you have different discharge points. Each municipality might have more than one discharge point. So your system might have a pipe that discharges here, here, and here. So you have to have different allocations depending on how the stream is impaired and that equation, how that factors in. And then you have a waste load allocation for each of the three pollutants of concern. So you can have multiple and different pollution reduction goals within your jurisdiction. And that complicates things, but the good news is that because you're operating in a group permit, you can also work together with the other communities in the area that you're in the permit with to address this issue. Okay, what's this percent reduction approach? So how did MMSD and the DNR and the EPA get to what those amounts are? Basically, they use modeling. I'm not a modeler. I'm actually not even a scientist. Sam could probably tell you more about modeling, but they use engineering modeling approaches to determine the amount of TSS and phosphorus generated in the village in these urban areas based on the land use and how much is flowing through the storm pipes into the local waterways annually on an average basis. Okay? Then they incorporate what you already have in place to deal with stormwater, like your ponds or other stormwater quality practice, that might be green infrastructure, what you're already doing to deal with stormwater. And then they determine how much phosphorus and TSS has to be removed. And then those waste load allocations are converted into percent reductions. So it might say you have to reduce your phosphorus by this percentage, 20%, 70%, 80%. That's how that equation factors in. So when Leanne gets this stuff, it says this is the percent reduction that has to be reached for this reach shed.
Certain date.
This isn't though. We'll get to that. And there's guidance. There's written guidance. And so it's not like other areas, other communities in the state have been through this process, and there's written guidance to follow. So how do you implement it here? Through the MS4 permit, through the North Shore group. There's this benchmarking concept, and the idea is, and I have another slide that shows this, that It took us like 100 or more years to get to the point we're at now. And although the TMDL is incorporated into the MS4 permit, you're not expected to reach the end goal within that 5-year permit period. Honestly, it's probably going to take a good 25, 30 or more years to get to that point. And everybody understands that. So Wisconsin DNR is going to be using this benchmarking approach to show, hey, this is where you are now, and this is where we want you to get, and we want to see that you're making progress, and the things that you're saying that you're going to do line up eventually with the reductions that you're going to have to make, that there's some relationship between the things that you're going to put in your stormwater management plan that line up with where you have to end up at the end of the whatever. Now, the sooner you get that done, the sooner, hopefully, the stream can be delisted because the water quality has improved. But it's really expensive to do some of these things. And then there are other options to compliance besides just regulatory compliance in your MS4 permit. And I'm not going to get into those right now. But the folks that write your stormwater management plan know all about alternative compliance. So, what do you have to do? Number 1 and 2 you've already done. We already know. We already know that water body is impaired because it's on the 303D list. There's already a TMDL. We already know what applies to your MS4. So number 3 is you have to update your stormwater management program, and that means update your stormwater management plan. And then through that, you implement programs and practices to address the TMDL. Best management practices. What can you do on the ground to minimize the amount of pollutants that are getting into the system? And then you have to continually assess the effectiveness. So modeling is what created the TMDLs and the waste load allocations, but it might be that monitoring is the option that you want to use to find out how you're doing and whether these streams are still impaired. I'll also add that the modeling that was done based on data from some time ago. So some municipalities or people are concerned that, like, oh, that data's not old, it's not accurate anymore. Well, it's just meant to be a benchmark. So if you can show that you're in better shape than the modeling suggested, that works to your advantage. You're not kind of held by that old data, it's just to start the process. So the permit compliance schedule basically says each MS4 permit is for a 5-year term. And during the upcoming process, you are going to be able to negotiate with the Department of Natural Resources to decide what goes into your stormwater permit. They would tell you that that is really what they want to see happen. That they don't want to tell you what to do because you know better than they do what needs to be done in your community. Now, I can share with you that, again, compliance is on a reach by reach. It's not like the whole village has one tool or one solution, because you got to look at each reach shed. And you might want to work with your neighboring community that's in the same reach shed, because the water doesn't stop at geographic or geopolitical boundaries. So modeling still used, but monitoring is definitely a tool, and each community on its own is going to figure out how to do those things. The process that's happening with the Menominee-based permit group right now, they're going through this process of negotiating and filling out information that's going to inform what their MS4 permit is going to look like. And there will be, I think, plenty of time for the communities in the North Shore group permit to sit down with the folks at DNR who will ultimately write the permit to talk about what should be included in there. So even though the permit is set to expire the end of June, is that? I believe so. I'm not the DNR, I can't speak for them, but I would suggest to you that, at least based on what's happened in the Menominee group, you're going to have more time than by the end of June to figure that all out. You'll have plenty of time to work on that process. It's not too late to start, or early to start, and they've already started.
We have, the North Shore Public Works Directors, engineers meet on a quarterly basis, and this is a topic of discussion at every one of our meetings. And we have met already and have another meeting scheduled with our MS4 rep from DNR to start talking about what they think they're going to write into this next permit round. Our contacts with DNR have been very collaborative. It's not them walking in the room with a big hammer. They've been very good about, this is the goal. What do you think? How do you think you can get there? How can we work together to get to a mutually agreeable point? Now, that's not to say they're being pushovers in that discussion, but they have been very receptive to comments from the municipalities.
Leanne, can you share, has there been, how do we think we can get to that goal? Has there been that discussion?
No, because that really will vary by community, and even by community, it will vary within each reach or each sub.
Yep. But I'm just asking about the discussion. Have you had any of those kind of discussions with DNR to date?
No, it's been very general, and they, as Linda said earlier, they agree and understand that this is not, compliance will not occur within the next 5-year permit cycle, and probably not the next 5 permit cycles. It is a long-term goal and process.
Yeah, they really want to see that you are taking it seriously and making steps toward improvement. So, again, we know why we're doing this. So impaired waters can improve over time, and the TMDLs that we have, phosphorus, TSS, and bacteria, are the big issues in this region. And intervention is necessary. We've been continuing, right, we caused the issue, humans caused the issue, we gotta fix the issue. Big caveat from Sweetwater's perspective, I think from DNR's perspective, I think should be from your perspective as well. We can't just focus on the TMDLs. Those are just 3 pollutants that cause problems to water quality. There are other issues. Chlorides, road salt is another issue. And if you just focus on those things, it might be that you reduce those pollutants, but you still have impaired waters. And then you're just going to get, it's still not going to come off the list. So you really have to think a lot more holistically about things that you can do to improve the water quality in the stream. And it's not always just reduction of those 3 pollutants.
We like to think of it as a diet.
It is, it's a diet.
You can eliminate certain things. You can eliminate sugar. It doesn't automatically make you healthy.
Right, you should walk. You should go for walks as well, right, and do a little weightlifting. So I was teasing with Leanne before I started talking that this is probably how she feels some days, because there are a lot of different competing interests and regulations and rules, and it's very circular. So I could have started at one place and ended up so it's like it's hard work, and you need a good firm to help you with that hard work. And which is why you have RFP out for a stormwater management plan that specifically considers the TMDLs that are coming your way. So this is the point where I talk about kind of hearkening back to this idea that it's not just those pollutants. Stormwater management plans are not just about water quality, although that's a really important part. I would say as you're reviewing the RFPs, look for a firm that has experience with not just writing a stormwater management plan, but with all sorts of MS4 issues and TMDL issues. Understands the concerns of your specific community. Is willing to look at partnership opportunities with the other North Shore group permit communities. And I have to say that from my perspective, I think the North Shore group is probably the most, sorry Menominee, is probably the most on top of it and actually collaborative. You guys call your own meetings. DNR calls the Menominee Group permit meetings. Like, this is a really good group of communities that are taking their jobs very seriously and work really hard and collaboratively together. So you want to find a firm that understands that. And this is a really important point too. We all know that there are lots of infrastructure issues in this country and probably in the village. And so when you're looking at making water quality improvements to help with compliance with your MS4 permit that's incorporating the TMDLs, you want to make sure that your planning is for multi-purpose projects. So if you are doing a road project and you can do stormwater quality at the same time, you do that together, right? You just don't kind of go out. So it's really incorporating park planning and flooding issues with the water quality improvement projects. And most firms know how to do that, but some do it better than others. And here's why. Because well-planned multi-purpose projects